What if I told you that the clock on your wall is lying to you? That the calendar on your phone is a complete illusion? That the entire concept of time, past, present, and future, doesn't actually exist? This sounds insane, right? But 800 years ago, Ibn-Arabi mathematically and mystically proved that time is pure illusion. And in 1905, Albert Einstein accidentally confirmed what this Islamic mystic had been teaching for centuries. But before we dive into how Ibn-Arabi shattered our understanding of time, let me ask you something. Right now, in this moment, where is yesterday? Not the effects of yesterday, the memories, the consequences, the physical changes that yesterday created. I mean yesterday itself. Where is it? You might say, yesterday is in the past. But where is the past? Can you point to it? Can you touch it? Can you find it anywhere other than in your memory? And what about tomorrow? Where is tomorrow hiding? You might say, tomorrow is in the future. But where is the future? Show me the future. Not your plans for the future, not your expectations about the future, but the actual future itself. This isn't just philosophical wordplay. This is the beginning of understanding what Ibn Arabi discovered through mystical insight 8 centuries before modern physics caught up. Time, as we experience it, is a constructive consciousness, not a fundamental feature of reality. In the year 1200 AD, while European scholars were debating theological minutiae, Ibn Arabi was exploring the deepest mysteries of existence. He called his understanding of time al-waqt, but his conception of waqt was radically different from our linear understanding of temporal flow. According to Ibn Arabi, what we call time is actually the rhythm of divine creativity. Reality doesn't unfold through time. Reality is the eternal moment of divine self-expression, appearing to consciousness as if it were sequential. The past didn't happen before, and the future won't happen later. Everything is happening in one eternal now, but consciousness experiences this eternal simultaneity as temporal sequence. This sounds mystical and abstract, but Ibn Arabi was surprisingly precise about the mechanics of this illusion. He taught that consciousness itself creates the experience of temporal flow by moving its attention from one aspect of eternal reality to another. Like a spotlight moving across a vast landscape, consciousness illuminates different aspects of what already exists, creating the illusion that these aspects are coming into being sequentially. To understand this, imagine watching a movie. The entire movie exists simultaneously on the film reel or digital file. Every scene, from beginning to end, is present at the same time. But your consciousness experiences the movie sequentially because that's how your awareness moves through the information. The movie doesn't create itself moment by moment as you watch. It already exists in its totality. Your viewing creates the experience of temporal unfolding. Ibn Arabi taught that reality works exactly the same way. What we call the universe is like an infinite movie that exists in its totality outside of time. Consciousness moves through this reality, creating the experience of past, present, and future. But the entire movie of existence, including what you call your birth and death, your entire life story, everything that ever was or will be, already exists in the eternal now. This is why Ibn Arabi could say, with complete certainty, that there is no real difference between past, present, and future. They are all equally present in the eternal moment of divine being. What creates the appearance of difference is the limited perspective of individual consciousness, which can only focus on one aspect of infinite reality at a time. But Ibn Arabi went even deeper. He didn't just say that time is an illusion. He explained exactly why consciousness creates this illusion and what purpose it serves. According to his teaching, the experience of temporal sequence is how infinite divine consciousness explores its own unlimited creativity Think about it this way. If you knew everything that could ever be known, experienced everything that could ever be experienced all at once, what would be left to discover? Infinite consciousness faces this paradox. To experience the joy of discovery, learning, growth, and becoming, infinite awareness must temporarily limit itself, must forget its omniscience and experience reality as if it were unfolding for the first time. This is what Ibn-Arabi called the divine play, Lila. God creates the experience of time and sequence, not because he doesn't know what will happen, but because experiencing the unknown is more delightful than being trapped in omniscience. Every moment of your life is divine consciousness experiencing the joy of discovery through the temporary limitation of your individual perspective. This understanding completely transforms how you relate to your past and future. Your past isn't gone. It exists eternally in the infinite now, just as accessible as this present moment. Your future isn't waiting to happen. It already exists in the eternal totality of divine being, waiting for consciousness to discover it. But here's where Ibn Arabi's teaching becomes intensely practical. If time is an illusion created by consciousness, then by changing how consciousness relates to time, you can fundamentally alter your experience of reality. Most people live as slaves to their past and prisoners of their future. They believe that past events have permanent effects that must continue into the future. They believe that future events are fixed by past causes. But if past and future are both present now, then the past can be healed, transformed, and rewritten in this moment. The future can be created fresh, independent of past conditioning. Ibn Arabi taught specific practices for what he called temporal transcendence, learning to live from the eternal now rather than from the illusion of linear time. The first practice is what he called presence, learning to recognize that this moment contains everything that ever was or will be. When you truly understand that the past exists only in present memory and the future exists only in present imagination, you realize that you've never actually experienced anything other than now. Every experience you've ever had happened in what was then the present moment. Every experience you ever will happen in what will then be the present moment. This means that the present moment isn't just where life happens. The present moment is where all of life happens. Everything else is mental projection. The second practice Ibn Arabi taught was eternal witnessing, learning to observe your experience from the perspective of the eternal consciousness that is outside of time. From this perspective, your entire life story, from birth to death, appears as a single, complete, perfect expression of divine creativity, like a beautiful painting that exists all at once. When you witness your life from this eternal perspective, problems that seem overwhelming from within time reveal themselves as perfect elements in a larger pattern. Difficulties that appear to be obstacles from within temporal consciousness are seen as necessary brushstrokes in the masterpiece of your existence. But perhaps the most radical implication of Ibn Arabi's teaching about time is this: if time doesn't exist, then death doesn't exist in the way we imagine it. Death appears to be the end of temporal existence. But if temporal existence is an illusion to begin with, then death is simply the end of an illusion, not the end of what you actually are. The consciousness that is reading these words right now has never been born and will never die, because it exists outside of time. The story of your birth and death is a narrative that consciousness tells itself, but consciousness itself is the eternal witness that observes all stories without being limited by any of them. This is why Ibn Arabi could speak with such certainty about the afterlife, about the continuation of consciousness beyond bodily death, about the eternal nature of the soul. He wasn't speculating or believing, he was describing what he could see from the perspective of timeless awareness. 800 years later, Einstein would discover that time is indeed relative, that simultaneity is an illusion, that what we call past and future are simply different regions of a four-dimensional space-time continuum that exists all at once. His mathematical equations would prove what Ibn-Arabi had seen through mystical insight. Time as we experience it is not fundamental to reality. But Einstein stopped at the physics. Ibn-Arabi went to the metaphysics. He didn't just discover that time is relative. He discovered what time is relative to. He found the eternal ground of being that exists outside of time and space, the infinite consciousness that creates the experience of temporal reality without being limited by it. This is why Ibn Arabi's understanding of time is not just intellectually interesting, but spiritually transformative. When you really grasp that time is an illusion created by consciousness, you discover that you are not trapped by your past, not limited by your circumstances, not bound by the apparent constraints of linear existence. In every moment, you have access to the creative power that is constantly bringing reality into being. In every moment, you can choose to experience yourself as the eternal consciousness that is witnessing the dance of time, rather than as a temporary character caught up in the drama of temporal existence. This doesn't mean that practical time becomes irrelevant. You still need to show up for appointments, pay bills when they're due, plant seeds in spring if you want flowers in summer. But these practical accommodations to the illusion of time become play rather than imprisonment. You work with temporal reality without being enslaved by it. The deepest freedom Ibn Arabi discovered is this: when you know that time is an illusion, you can choose how to dance with that illusion. You can use linear time as a tool for creativity, for growth, for service, for love, without believing that linear time defines what you are or limits what you can become. Right now, as you absorb these ideas, you might notice something strange happening. The more you understand that time is an illusion, the more present you become. The more you grasp that past and future are mental constructs, the more vividly you experience this moment. This isn't accidental. This is the natural result of consciousness recognizing its true nature. Ibn Arabi called this recognition Baqa, the abiding and eternal presence that comes after the illusion of temporal existence has been seen through. In Baqa, you don't lose your individuality or your capacity to function in the world of apparent time. Instead, you gain the freedom to participate in temporal reality without being trapped by it. You begin to live from the eternal now, while still engaging skillfully with the practical requirements of linear time. You make plans for the future while knowing that the future is present now. You learn from the past while knowing that the past has no independent existence apart from present memory. This is the ultimate gift of Ibn Arabi's teaching about time. Not the destruction of temporal experience, but the liberation from temporal imprisonment. When you know that time doesn't exist as an independent reality, you become free to use time creatively rather than being used by time compulsively. The clock on your wall isn't lying intentionally. It's measuring something real, the movement of consciousness through eternal reality. But what it can't measure is the consciousness that does the moving, the eternal awareness that creates the experience of time without being limited by time. That awareness is what you are. Not in time, but time in you. Not moving through moments, but the eternal presence in which all moments appear and disappear. Not bound by the past or limited by the future, but free to dance with the illusion of temporal reality while knowing yourself as the eternal dancer. Ibn Arabi discovered this truth through mystical realization 8 centuries ago. Einstein glimpsed it through mathematical insight a century ago. Now science is beginning to confirm what mystics have always known. Reality is far stranger, far more mysterious, far more wonderful than our ordinary concepts of time and space can capture. The question is, are you ready to live from this understanding? Are you ready to discover yourself as the eternal consciousness that creates the experience of time without being trapped by it? Are you ready to dance with the illusion of linear existence, on knowing yourself as the eternal dancer? Time doesn't exist, but timeless awareness does. And that awareness is reading these words right now, in the only moment that ever truly is, the eternal now.